everyone, this is Paul, the Oaken Knight, coming to you with an overview of Downfall of the Third Reich, a game designed by Victor Catala and published by Do It Games. Downfall allows up to 3 players to fight through the Second World War in Europe, placing them at the head of one or more major powers during the conflict. It is intended as a low-complexity game suitable for less experienced players, or those wanting to play out the war in a single, albeit extended setting. Let's lay it out and see how well this one stacks up. Components. Downfall's components are quite simply first-rate. The box is glossy and ample for housing the goodies held within. Nice cover art based on a semi-colorized historical photo, maybe Stalingrad, with the usual marketing blurb on the reverse. The game scale is Army, high-level formations, with quarterly turns beginning in 1940. The game begins during the Phony War period that occurred after the 1939 Polish campaign, but before the 1940 campaign in France, and continues through the spring of 1945. The game is intended for 2 to 3 players, with playing time estimated at 4 hours. As usual, this is probably optimistic, but I'd be comfortable saying that it goes for about 6 hours once players are familiar with it. A long evening or afternoon's worth of gameplay, not bad for playing almost all of World War II in the ETO. The game is easy to set up. If you look closely, you can see the unit and status marker setup information printed right on the map. The last game I saw this on was the venerable The Longest Day, back in the glory days of Avalon Hill. Man, those were the days. The publisher does not cite a complexity or solitaire rating. Using GMT's 9-point scale, I'd rate complexity at a 3, with solitaire at a 7. Solitaire rating is dropped a couple points because technology research is hidden from an opponent until it is actually used. Surprise! And air missions are intercepted by going back and forth between the players, which is a bit awkward for solitaire. Neither is a game breaker or substantially affects the solitaire experience. Complexity is a 3, the high end of basic, because I found the rules more difficult to understand than I expected them to be. More on that later. The map. The game's 23 by 33-inch map is hard-mounted and depicts the European theater of operations, plus a mini-map representation of North America. The map is divided into areas, not hexes, with historically neutral nations such as Turkey and Switzerland grayed out. The map quality is very good, but mine did need to be trained to lay flat, which was fully accomplished overnight. Ocean areas are represented with much larger areas, used mainly to redeploy and resupply land units. Naval warfare is very abstract and is limited to the campaign to suppress the U-boats. Counters. Counters are of various sizes and shapes, all of which are reasonably consistent with today's standards for larger counters, and support gameplay very well, even for my eyes. The 199 counters come individually center-mounted on 3 sprues. Counters punch out easily and cleanly and come with pre-rounded corners. My Oregon Laminations corner clipper can stay securely in its box with this one. And for a touch of truly deluxe treatment, the game includes a counter tray that is both big enough to hold all the counters and has a top that actually fits on the tray securely. It's been a long time since counter trays were routinely included with games, let me tell you. Play aids. 2 identical player aids are provided with various charts and tables on the obverse and setup instructions for a Stalingrad scenario on the reverse. The player aids come hard-mounted, which is a nice touch. Rules. The 16-page rulebook contains about 5.5 pages of actual rules, campaign setup information, about 3.5 pages of examples of play, designer's notes, and some fluff. The design is a bit unusual. While there are player turns, with each game turn consisting of a German, Allied, and finally the Soviet player turn, but there are no phases within each player turn. Actions. Instead, the game offers a palette of actions that are available to choose from. Actions include 1. Supply. Generate supply points that accumulate and are required for armies to move and fight. 2. Reinforcements. Major powers build new units. 3. Armor production. Accumulate armor points that, when paired with reinforcement points, build new armor units. Air missions. Build air missions that are used to fly, air missions. 5. Submarine missions, Axis only, used to attack the Western Allied economy. 6. Development. Used to discover new technologies that vary somewhat from one major power to another. Generally, technologies allow powers to do what they already can do, only better, but in some cases they allow completely new capabilities. Until 1944, it takes 2 actions over 2 turns to research a new technology, and the actual technology being researched is hidden, as mentioned earlier, until it is used. And 7. Lend-Lease, Allies only. Transfer an action from the Western Allies to the Soviets. The number of actions available each turn varies from major power to major power during different time periods of the war and when a major power transitions from limited war to total war. The Western Allies have the largest swing, moving from 2 actions while Britain stands alone, up to 5 after the U.S. entry, which always occurs at the beginning of 1942. When all 3 powers are at total war, the Western Allies will have 5 actions, the Soviets will have 3, and the Germans will have 4. So as the war develops, the Allies will have the advantage in the number of actions they get to perform each turn. Army operations. Armies move and fight by performing army operations, which generally involves moving armies, triggering combat, and paying for it with supplies. 1 supply point per unit. Army operations, apparently, may occur at any time between performing actions. I say apparently because I find nothing in the rules that actually says this. Also apparently, operations may occur more than once per turn. Again, I see nothing in the rules that come out and says this, but it is implied by the first example of play at the back of the book that shows actions and operations being interleaved with each other. The only allusion to how operations actually work is the vague statement that, quote, actions must be resolved after all movements have been made. That's it! This is all the rules say. Yet the example of play shows actions being taken, then operations, then another action, then more operations, then air missions being assigned to attacks, and finally, combat resolution. The overall feeling is that the Army Operations Rules section is just hanging there, disconnected from the rest of the rules, instead of being integrated with them. Combat. Combat is a very simple affair with 1 unit attacking 1 unit while they are in the same area on the map. Each side adds their unit strength, terrain effects, support from other units in the same area, and air support, together with the roll of a die. The losing unit is eliminated, and the winning unit loses 1 of 2 steps unless the winning total was at least twice the losing unit's total. Attacking units may receive ground support when they have more armies in the area than their opponent, 1 unit per unit in excess of the other. Each full-strength supporting unit adds 2 to the attacker's die, and only the attacker's die. With the stacking limit of 3 friendly armies per area, the maximum ground support that may be received is 4 points, when the attacking side has 3 armies and the defender has only 1. Air support adds an additional 2 points to the attacker's roll as well. Combat is quick and decisive, allowing the game to move along at a brisk pace even while the Germans and the Soviets are at war. Strategic warfare. The game provides for both the Western Allies and the Germans to fight on the strategic level, where successful attacks reduce the number of actions allowed by their opponent. U-boats. The Germans fight with their submarines. A maximum 2 submarines may be deployed to attack the Allied economy. For every 2 U-boat missions deployed, the Western Allies lose 1 action in their player turn. Britain is particularly vulnerable while they stand alone and are receiving only 2 actions even without being targeted by U-boats. After use, U-boat missions are set aside and must be rebuilt to be used in a subsequent turn. Strategic warfare is not free, and the Germans pay 1 action to build 3 U-boat missions. The only way to stop U-boat attacks is for the Allies to research advanced warship technology, which completely blocks basic U-boat attacks. But the Germans may also research advanced warships, which allows building advanced submarine missions, where, quote, a single one of these subtracts 1 mission from the Allies. Whether the rules are saying that the new, more effective submarines are simply a more cost-effective way to reduce the Allies by 1 action, or whether the Axis is still allowed to assign 2 such missions and consequently eliminate 2 Allied actions, is an exercise left to the reader's imagination. Note that the German advanced submarine missions may never be intercepted. They always get through. Strategic bombing. Once the Allies research advanced aviation, they may conduct strategic bombing. Up to 2 bomber missions may be assigned, resulting in the German losing 1 action. Strategic bombing may be intercepted once the Germans also research advanced aviation. Then, they can intercept with advanced air missions. The first 2 missions assigned will eliminate 2 bombing missions each. Afterwards, Allied air missions are countered on a 1-to-1 basis. The implication is that the players go back and forth, assigning and countering missions until one side says, "Uncle," but I can't find anywhere in the rules that says this explicitly. Doing the math, the game seems to be much harder on the Allies than the Germans, since I believe advanced German submarines take out 2 Allied actions per turn at the cost of 2/3 of an action and cannot be intercepted. In response, the Allies pay a minimum of 1.5 actions to build the 6 advanced air missions, while the Germans pay 1/2 an action to do the 2 doubly effective interceptions, plus 1 more to take the bomb hit from bombers 5 and 6, which are also consumed by the mission and must be rebuilt. Any way you slice it, both sides are paying dearly to do all-out strategic warfare, but the Allies are paying and being hit for 3.5 actions per turn, while the Germans only 2 1/6. Well over half of both economies are being tied up with strategic warfare. Maybe the Russians will bail out the Western Allies, but I doubt there will be any lend-lease happening if strategic warfare is going all out. Evaluation. The good stuff. The components are fine, enough said. It is a beautiful game, even if you do not have the larger neoprene map that was offered as an option. I don't have it, and I think the hard-mounted map that comes with the game is just fine. The game promises a relatively quick, uncomplicated way to play out World War II in the European theater. Just grab the beer and pretzels and go at it. Unfortunately, the rules. While many World War II ETO games have small tomes for rulebooks, Downfall, after eliminating the cover page, counted as page 1, and the page of pretty pictures that follows has 5.5 pages of rules. It needed more. If it had twice the page count, it still would have achieved its objective to be a low complexity, reasonably historical, yet relatively quick game to play on the subject. First, errors. The surrender section of the rules state, when a country surrenders, its armies are eliminated and its areas become controlled by the surrendering side. So when I surrender to you, I get back all my land and you have to leave, right? Fortunately, there are not many all-out bloopers in the rules, although some sentences could be phrased better, making them easier for English-reading customers to digest. Second, vagueness. The rules governing deployment of Italian armies outside of Italy state, quote, in total war, they can operate anywhere, if they keep at least 4 in these regions. For what? In fairness, I think I can figure this one out, but with a game designed for beginners, I believe everything needs to be spelled out. 3. Exceptions. While reading the rules, I began to feel that an unusual number of rules have a list of exceptions attached to them. While possibly suitable for an advanced gamer, they make the rules seem much more complicated than they otherwise would be, and may raise the bar above what a nascent gamer can absorb. Fourth, omissions. I believe any game that is both unconventional, for example, without phases, and targeted at less experienced gamers needs to be complete, correct, and with fully documented procedures. As noted earlier, Downfall leaves Army operations floating, with no procedures that I can find governing when and how they are used. As an experienced gamer, after spending 2 evenings reading the tea leaves and animal droppings left behind by this rule set, and watching a couple hours of video produced by Do It, I think I figured it out. However, it is impossible to know that I figured it out based on the rules alone. Regardless, the level of effort to fill in the blanks left by this rulebook makes it seem like a much more complicated game than it really is. Conclusion. Downfall is the first game by Do It that I have looked at. I think there could be a good game lurking somewhere inside this box. Physically, it hits all the buttons of a Class A production. But in my opinion, the rules do not. They need an overhaul before I can recommend the game, especially to a novice. Too much time needs to be spent ferreting out what was meant by one brief sentence that is left without elaboration or support, and without any short examples embedded in the rules themselves. Many times the rules are silent on procedures, stating that you can do X, but not elaborating on how you do X or when you do X. In short, were I to grade Downfall, I would give it that rarest of grades, I, for incomplete. Should Do It step forward and offer a substantial rules revision, there could be a really nice game in this most beautiful box. But unless you enjoy rolling your own rules, as I've been known to do, you might best wait. Okay, that's all I have for Downfall of the Third Reich. If you think I brought some value to you and you are not a subscriber, please consider hitting the subscribe button. And of course, let me express my thanks to all of you who offer your support through your subscription and viewership. But for now, this is Paul, the Oaken Knight, wishing you all a pleasant evening.